Just got out of the theater. Early access screening at Twisters.
I think that...
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, or depending on what time you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. I will try my best to minimize the amount of tornado puns I do in this entire video, but I'm in a little bit of a hurry, so I'm gonna go ahead and just tear this up nice and quick. That's one. I just got out of an early access screening of Twisters. The movie does come out tomorrow, regular screenings. They just did one screening in IMAX tonight. Definitely wanted to check it out because this is, I would say, one of my more anticipated movies of the summer. Right off the bat, did not disappoint. This may be the most likable movie of the summer. Before I do go into any further details though, I do want to say there are spoilers ahead. So you have been warned. Yeah, this movie was I was just so into it. Gonna start with the things that I really did just like about the likable things. First off, the cast. Cast is absolutely great. Absolutely stacked cast in this movie, of course, led by Daisy Edgar-Jones and Glenn Powell. They are basically our Helen Hunt, Bill Paxton in this movie. Daisy Edgar-Jones does a great job. I can't say I've seen her in anything before. I'm familiar with her. I know she did other movies. I just never seen her in anything, and she was really good. And Glenn Powell, I just think, is one of the most charismatic actors right now working in Hollywood. The first time I ever saw him was Richard Linklater's Everybody Wants Some. He left a great impression for me, and then just never really saw much over the years. Then, of course, blew up on the big screen with Top Gun Maverick. Over the last, probably I'd say, year or two, he's becoming a leading man in Hollywood, and for good reasons, because this guy is hella talented. Talking about likable, like, it's just not, it's hard to not like Glenn Powell in this movie, because that is a character that, man, he could be so douchey, and you just want to just hate him. But Glenn Powell just does it so well that you can't, or at least I couldn't. I was falling in love with him just like Daisy Edgar-Jones was. That is a bit of a plot of the movie, is the romantic angle. I do remember the original movie, Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt, they were getting a divorce, kind of fall back in love again, and essentially get back together. For this movie, these two characters don't know each other. I like how they did it. I don't think it was cheesy. I don't think it was cliche. You basically don't see these characters kiss at all. It's insinuated at the end that they are going to get together. Great writing. I think Mark L. Smith, I saw in the credits, wrote this movie. Absolutely great job. Joseph Kosinski with the story credit. I know him more as a director, but awesome. You know, you guys, fantastic job. Characters are so likable because the writing is so good. Yes, Glenn Powell, Daisy Edgar-Jones, they knock it out of the park with their chemistry, their dynamic, where they're kind of butting against each other, but then they start working for each other. Loved it. As far as the supporting cast, Anthony Ramos, I wasn't sure what kind of role he's going to play in this movie. He actually starts off as like the slacker, you know, just wants to sleep in or just goof around kind of guy, but then he becomes the sort of corporate suit. There is a little bit of a love triangle with him and her, but he kind of comes to understanding at the end of the movie that it's not going to work for me. And there's a little cheer moment when he says to himself, when he's kind of saying to Tyler, go get her. They actually got a nice little applause in the theater. Standout performance for me, even though he's not in it that much. I would say my hidden gem or maybe the funnest character of the movie is played by Brandon Perea. You may remember him from the movie Nope. He just looks very different in this movie, but he is a lot of fun. He is essentially our Philip Seymour Hoffman character.
The extreme! It's the extreme!
In the arms of the angel.
Just that kind of goofy guy who brings a lot of comic relief. He did have the funniest line in the movie that made the whole theater laugh right at the end, when he basically says to Daisy Edgar-Jones, I love you.
Love you too.
Got a great laugh out of me. Another thing, talking about the writing, this movie's funny. And this movie balances a really good comedy drama aspect to it, because there's moments where I was getting a little emotional. I don't know what it is about disaster movies or more realistic disaster movies like this, where you see the aftermath of people's homes being destroyed and how people's lives are going to be absolutely changed. And unfortunately, people's lives may have even ended in these terrible natural disasters. And they do these scenes very well. They actually make Tyler Owen's team, which you don't really know much about. You just think they're these content creator tornado chasers, but it turns out that they actually care about what they're doing. They care about the people that are getting affected. I thought that scene was very well done when they're walking through the aftermath of the storm, and you just see Tyler and his team there trying to help people. You know, they easily could have just had a moment where they just say that they're good people, but instead they actually show it, and that's just a good job of showing and not telling. But it's a very, very well balanced movie with the humor and with the drama of the tornadoes. You are going to get a lot of CGI in this movie, but I thought they did it very well. You know, I do remember in the original Twister, good amount of CGI that came out in 96, I think. So that was right during that, you know, post Jurassic Park Terminator 2 time, CGI was becoming a big thing. I don't know how much practical stuff they did here, but I didn't mind it. You know, I would say the action maybe isn't my favorite part of the movie. It is more of like, it's actually more of the characters and just kind of learning about what they're trying to do, because that is like the big difference between this movie and the original. The original Twister was just them trying to get this information so that they could give people longer time to have a warning before a tornado would hit them. That's one of the things I kind of forget about the original Twister, is that it was never about them actually being able to essentially eliminate a twister or a tornado. This movie is. That's where they take the next step. You know, what would it be 28 years later? Well, okay, let's see if we can actually eliminate tornadoes, which I don't know if that's even a thing. I don't even know if that's even realistically possible. I have to remind myself, it is a movie, suspension of disbelief. I just went with it. I was totally fine with it. So yes, this is a sequel to a 1996 disaster movie called Twister. Once again, just to give credit to the writing and the filmmaking, I thought they did an absolutely fantastic job of not overbearing us with references to the first movie. In fact, there's barely any references to that first movie besides maybe the opening, where you have the Dorothy unit that basically was used in that first movie to get all that data for the tornado. They essentially kind of introduced that in the beginning as this sort of old technology, and that they need to use this new stuff, which would totally make sense. It's been almost 30 years. And of course, the one scene which I thought was like, oh, are they going to go this way with it? Has to be when Daisy Edgar Jones goes back home where her mom lives. And at first I thought they were setting it up because it had that just feel to it. I was like, oh, is it going to be Helen Hunt as the mom? They do this big tease throughout up until this point where we don't know what Kate's last name is. Kate is Daisy Edgar Jones. We don't know her last name, and they kind of do that, seems like on purpose. So I'm like, oh, is it going to be revealed that her last name is Helen Hunt's character from the original movie? And, you know, she goes home, and we do see a picture of her and her mom on the wall, which clearly is not Helen Hunt. So I'm like, okay, I guess not. But then they still had this really big buildup. You know, you hear the mom off screen going, hey, is that you? Yeah, I'm in the kitchen. And I was like, could it still be? And then they had this really great shot of the mom walking in. It's all shadow on her. And then she walks into the light, and it's Maura Tierney. And I was like, oh, okay. So not Helen Hunt, it's Maura Tierney. Got it. Maybe the director did that to psych us out, because he totally got me going. I was like, oh. And then I was like, okay, no big deal. Maura Tierney does a great job in the movie. If I have to go into a nitpick or a dislike, it's going to be this. I'm going to go with the rodeo scene. So the rodeo scene ultimately was still a pretty good scene. But my one gripe, or the one kind of where I was maybe rolling my eyes a little bit, is when they go into the motel and there's the couple. And it's like younger couple, like maybe like mid-20s, and the guy's arguing with the clerk about nothing working, and the girl's in the corner basically telling everybody like, it's not really a tornado, I know. And Glenn Powell, Daisy Edgar Jones, they're in there trying to warn people that you got to get out. I thought that was a little cheesy. It just feels kind of forced. Like what they're trying to, I get what they were trying to do with that scene. And of course, that couple, you just know they're going to die. And of course, you see them get in the truck. I remember that scene from the trailer, and they get sucked up. It's like, all right. That scene was a little cringy with just like their dialogue. And then finally, the last thing I just want to talk about real quick is the two different teams. So we see this in the original Twister. You have Cary Elwes and his sort of corporate team. They all wear the same shirt. And then it's Helen Hunt's team, and they all got personality. Everybody's got their own style, their own thing going on. And that's basically what this movie is. But what this movie does different, which I kind of liked and I really enjoyed, is that we see more of the corporate team and who they are. More Anthony Ramos. That's really it. Because he's the one that goes to get Daisy Edgar Jones to join the team, and then most of the team members we don't really know, besides one guy played by David Corenswet, aka Future Superman, and he is essentially the Cary Elwes character in this movie. He's just kind of the unlikable one. If there had to be like one, I would say, sort of bad guy, it would be him, which was a little unfortunate because I was like, man, I like David Corenswet. I don't want him to be the jerky jerk in this movie, but he is, and he does it well. It's almost the idea of like, remember the corporate team from the original Twister? What if we followed them a little bit more instead of the other guys? And then they start to kind of mesh together. Anthony Ramos eventually leaves the corporate team because he realizes, like, you know, his morals were more important than what they were after, where there's a whole like guy buying land kind of plot, which is a whole subplot in the movie, which I thought totally worked. Yeah, they kind of introduce it and you're like, got it, perfect, great. I thought this movie just ultimately was just so creative and well thought out. You know, when it comes to making a sequel 30 years later for a movie like this is what I want, and I think this is what audiences will want. Seems like it's getting pretty decent reviews right now at the moment. You'll see how it does over the weekend. I'm already planning to go see it again this weekend. I want to go take some other people to see it. So anyways, that's my take on Twisters. Really enjoyed it. Might be one of my favorite movies, if not my favorite movie so far this summer. Yeah, and if anybody out there wants to buy some merchandise from me, I would totally just put my face on a t-shirt. Anyways.
See you, chump.